Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. 4 tax reform bills, including proposals for a new Nigeria Revenue Service and tax ombudsman, passed for second reading. Bills aim to harmonize tax administration and reduce legal disputes across federal, state, and local levels. Senate President Akpabio highlights involvement of experts, governors, and stakeholders in upcoming hearings. And these bills are part of a broader effort to review and improve Nigeria's fiscal and tax frameworks following recommendations from a presidential committee. Joining us to discuss this is Dr. Obioha Oti. He's the acting national president, AMMBAN, and we also have Gabriel Foluso Fasoto. He's the former president, Chartered Institute of Taxation in Nigeria. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, so I'll start with you, Dr. Obioha. Now we're looking at new bills, new financial bills, reforms. But what is your reaction to this, especially when we know that the economy is not in the best shape? Nigerians are not making as much money. We do not have the spending power anymore. But yet we have these bills coming to play here. What is your own reaction to them?
Okay, thank you so much. When the president started the issue of tax reform and all that, some of us, particularly myself, I was excited because some of the issues around the reform were issues that we believe will actually help the economy to improve. For instance, if you check the current tax, that the process of taxation in Nigeria that is operational, you will notice that some of them has been around for a long time and they are due for reform. For instance, the issues of tax related to something like stamp duty, even the VAT, and so many of them. So if you check the idea behind this new tax bill, is actually to help improve the economy. Like if you do a comparative study of taxation among certain countries, let's even use Africa for instance, let's use Kenya, let's use South Africa, let's use Ghana to compare. And if you listen to the explanation given to the committee that was handling that reform, particularly the one they gave to the Senate, you will discover that the idea behind this new tax bill is to actually help the economy. So I am particularly excited that the bill has passed second reading in the Senate. However, I must caution because like every other thing that comes to Nigeria, every other good thing, there is usually that political angle which may defeat the original idea behind it. So if the new tax reform bill that the federal government is sponsoring is actually done exactly the way they propose, and the aim is to help improve the economy. For instance, you check some of the things inside it, like the federal government will scale down its own share from 15% to 10%, and then certain people within the country, for instance, now in Nigeria currently, if you earn up to 30,000 naira in a month, you are due for taxation. You are going to be taxed. But in the new tax reform bill, if you are earning low amount, if you are a low income earner, the new tax reform bill is proposing that you will not be taxed. So with all that and so many other things, which in the course of this discussion, we'll be bringing it out. So I'm excited, and I believe that if it is actually done the way that they are proposing it, I believe it will help improve the economy.
I love the fact that low-income earners would definitely be exempted from from taxes, right? Which is great, because if you do not have enough to put food on your table, I don't even know if you have enough to pay the taxes. But I want to come to Gabriel right now. I know that this is for the broader, this is part of the broader efforts to ensure that we have, better tax reforms in Nigeria to improve the fiscal, the fiscal policies, right? But how do you think this works? How do you think this aligns with what the economy needs right now?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Nigeria is on its way to economic prosperity, provided there is complete political will to see it through. You will recall that this Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform was set up in August last year. The aim is to reform our revenue position. And we are also told that they are given mandate to review the fiscal governance as well as economic growth and competitiveness. What does this portray? It means that they are to look at our total revenue generation, distribution, allocation, and accountability in totality, and see how they match our current operations in the country. You will recall that from the presentation of the committee, it was observed that what the whole nation budgeted for this year 2024 is less than 1/4 of what Kenya and South Africa had as budget, even though Nigeria is more in population than each of those countries. Then we realize that the total budget of the government for this year, including the supplementary budget, which happens to be 20 trillion in revenue, is far inadequate to cater for the 200 million Nigerians. The main source of government revenue happens to be taxation, while other sources are ancillary to taxation. I believe that it is because of this that the president, in his wisdom, has constituted this committee to ensure that they look into the reformation of our revenue generation. And in addition to that, our fiscal policies, how it will help our economy to grow, and we will be in best position to compare favorably with outside world. So it's an exciting situation. But number one, I said at the beginning of my presentation that political will is necessary.
Right.
Thank God the president has given the political will, but that is not enough. We also need the political will from the governors also. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Dr. Obioha, right. Some of the things here for the tax reform bill, one of it states target zero VAT on exports and essential commodities, reduce burden on small businesses, reduce company income tax from 30 to 25%, which is quite exciting, right? With all of this, in fact, I think a few days ago it was said that some businesses were shut down. Max Air was one of them. Dantata were shut down because, of course, they've not been paying taxes. And when it's tax evasion, is something that we hear a lot of times. Do you think that now with this new reform bills, because a lot of small businesses will probably have their burden reduced, now they can start to pay their own taxes, with the company tax being reduced from 30 to 25%, that would just even whip up the economy even more, with more people coming here and obviously having to start their own businesses, which in turn will start to generate revenue for the government?
Okay, if I got you very correctly, you are asking whether the new tax reform bill is going to help improve the business environment in Nigeria?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Exactly. Like I mentioned earlier, if you have the full information on the idea behind the new tax reform bill, you will notice that because the federal government is trying every means possible to lure investors to come to Nigeria. Now, one of the ways of making sure that investors come to invest in Nigeria is to attract them by making the country okay in all ramifications, including by making tax exciting, attractive to them. So if the country is taxing businesses heavily, that will make some businesses, some investors to run away from the country. Now, the government has decided to reduce tax on businesses, tax on individuals, and tax on some other things, and even decided to also reduce the share that the federal government usually gets from major taxes. So that is a step in the right direction. But another thing I want to bring out there is that the problem of Nigeria is not just the amount of tax or the percentage of taxation either to businesses or to individuals. It is usually the issue of tax administration. So that is why I'm even very happy about this bill, because it equally takes into consideration reforming the process of collecting the tax itself. If you check, a greater percentage of the tax that the Nigerian government collects is taxed on the poor. And if you compare it vis-a-vis to what happens in other countries, you discover that it is even the rich that are expected to pay a higher percentage of the amount of tax that is being collected for the purpose of government. So in this new tax reform bill, the bill takes care of this to make sure that Nigeria aligns properly with the best practices as it is in other countries in the world.
All right, thank you, sir. So, Gabriel, right, I want to understand this. There is going to be a new revenue service, right, in Nigeria. But a few months ago, there was the Oronsaye's report that said, you know, we need to start to merge most of all of these agencies that we have. But here now, with these reform bills, we're seeing that a new one is going to be created. And I'm wondering why, if we're saying that we want to cut the cost of governance, why do we have to, you know, have all of this? How does this also help us with it? Because fine, we can get excited and say, yes, there's going to be less burden on small businesses. Some businesses may be exempted from taxes, which is great. But from all of this, it still seems like we're going to be spending some money to it. So how does this even help with the economy? And why is it necessary?
Let me correct that impression. Nigeria, one of the bills, Nigerian Revenue Service Establishment Bill, is repealing the current Federal Inland Revenue Service Act.
Okay.
And proposed to replace it with Nigerian Revenue Service Board. Now, it's not a creation of another parastatal, but rather the existing Federal Inland Revenue Service is expected to transform into Nigerian Revenue Service Board. The reason being that, you know, according to that committee, the Federal Inland Revenue Service is perceived to be a federal agency, whereas the role it's performing happens to be that of the federation. So it should be an agency for the whole federation and not only for the federal government. So that is that. Now, currently, we are having a tax gap of 70%. What does that portend? It means that out of 100 naira or 100 million naira we ought to be collecting for tax. We are collecting only 30 million naira. Why 70 million naira happen to be uncollected? And there are so many reasons adduced for this, based on the study of this particular committee. The major part of it is that a lot of people feel disdained to pay their taxes for so many reasons. For example, there are some industries that are paying their taxes sincerely, but their competitors are having their way and they are thriving. They are making much more profit, and government appears not to be doing anything. There are so many leakages in the system.
Right.
Then the economic environment is not conducive. So there are so many things that this committee is looking at. But these bills, they are just means to an end. They are not the end in themselves. And I believe that by the time we start considering these bills, I believe other areas of the committee's job will be carried out.
All right. So
Thank you.
quickly, in 30 seconds, do you think it's going to address, multiple taxation in Nigeria and the ease of doing business?
Sure. The current bill is trying to collapse over 250 taxes and levies we have in Nigeria to less than 10 taxes and levies. So
Fantastic.
it's out to address this. If you see the bill, I think we are having about 9 taxation laws to be addressed to replace the over 200 taxes and levies we are having in the country right now.
All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I wish we had more time, but this is where we have to wrap it up right now. We want to say thank you to Obioha. We also want to say thank you to Gabriel Foluso for coming on the program. Thank you, gentlemen. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. All right, so we've just been talking about, the new tax reform bills that is set for second reading. This is where we have to say goodbye on the show today. Thank you so much for having the breakfast with me. My name is Rume Paulson. I'll see you again on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend.